Staying in Europe, but to other issues, Kosovo has signed the application documents to join the European Union, a process which could take years, if not decades, and is also dependent on normalizing relations with Serbia. Prime Minister Albin Kurti called it a historic moment for his country. EU is already working on a deal it hopes both parties will agree to within a year. Serb protesters in northern Kosovo blocked the main roads following an exchange of fire with police after the arrest of a former Serb policeman amid rising tensions between authorities and Kosovo's Serb minority. Albanian majority Kosovo declared independence from Serbia in 2008 with the backing of the West, following the 1998 to 1999 war in which NATO intervened to protect the territory. Well, the country is not the only one in the region until now that has not applied to join the EU. To one of the lead stories across Europe, especially in the European Union. Greek MEP Eva Kaili feels betrayed by European Parliament colleagues who decided to strip her of her role as Vice President of the Assembly on Tuesday. And that's according to her lawyer. It comes after she was accused of accepting bribes from Qatar. A case in which Kaili has denied any wrongdoing is evolving into one of the biggest corruption scandals to hit the European Union. She's currently in Belgian police detention. She was one of 14 vice presidents in the parliament. Belgian prosecutors have charged her and 3 Italians at the weekend with participating in a criminal organization, money laundering and corruption. Well, the federal prosecutor in Belgium has released a still photograph of cash that was found during a series of police raids at various locations, including parliament offices and in 19 homes. One source close to the investigation said that they discovered around 1.5 million euros, some of which were stashed in a suitcase in a hotel room. They also believe that there were monies that were pocketed from the World Cup host Qatar. Police led the searches over suspicion the EU officials accepted bribes from Qatar. However, the Gulf state and Kaili herself have denied any wrongdoing. I want to bring in foreign affairs commentator Colin Sweke, who's in Brussels, to weigh in. Interestingly, that's the capital of the European Union, isn't it? Collins, thanks for joining us on the program today. And this story, the rest of Europe still reeling from this corruption scandal that has hit the continental institution. What do you make of what has happened so far?
Thank you, Marachi, for having me. I believe that the bigger question beyond unraveling what has happened is how deep does this rot go? So I believe that the Belgian prosecutor, in the name of Michel Kleisse, is actually devoting quite a substantial part of his time to, number one, investigating this specific corruption issue involving Eva Kaili, but also trying to interrogate what may have happened before that has not managed to come to the limelight. Because the institutions of the European Union, as a consequence of this specific corruption scandal, is under enormous pressure. They are also suffering from very, very serious integrity and reputation damages. And I think it is in the best interest of everyone involved, particularly the leadership of the European Union, to actually prove that this is not a systemic structural problem within the institutions of the European Union. And so that is where this is all concentrated on right now.
What's also interesting is, when this is actually showing up, when we're learning about this, and this is happening as the World Cup is going on in Qatar. And the mere fact that Qatar has been drawn into this, that they bribed, these officials, and then why cash in the end? So many questions. I want to talk about the indictment that this has on the kind of leadership the European Union has had so far. And you touched a little bit on that when you talk about the integrity, reputation damages that this has caused the European Union. What sort of confidence do you think that people have in the leadership of, especially the members of parliament right now, and the institution as a whole?
This is a scandal that the the leadership of the European Union will definitely not want to have. It doesn't do them any good, but at the moment, the citizens of Europe are actually looking to see how the leadership of the European Union responds to this. Because for them, it is a question of this matter, this specific corruption issue, being an isolated instance, or does it confirm actually the feeling of quite a significant number of people that the European Commission itself and the leadership is corrupt through and through? Now, what is happening is that people are actually looking at the response, I mean, in terms of the initial reactions of the leadership of the European Union, to make early assessments as to whether the reputation and integrity of the European Union is in tatters or not. And so far, I believe that they have done, the leadership of the European Commission has done the right thing. Number one, they have condemned this. Number two, they have called for reforms. Number three, they are saying that indeed, this is something that they ought not to have. Now, it is expected that beyond this, the European Union or the leadership itself will also look at issues that have happened before, similar events of the past, looking into them, xeroxing them to actually determine whether this had actually happened before and covered up in such an expert manner that, it didn't come to the limelight. So those are the sort of dynamics that are actually happening at this moment. And so far, they have handled it so well that how things proceed actually will determine the extent to which their integrity will be in tatters or otherwise.
Right, and one of the casualties of this scandal is, of course, the Vice President of the European Union, Eva Kaili, who's been defended by her lawyer about having no knowledge of, these monies or the favors given. What do you think about what she's saying, what her lawyer is saying, and then what role she could have played in this?
Well, no one would expect that she would admit to any wrongdoing. So the lawyer, herself through her lawyer, is saying exactly what is expected. And let us not underplay the technicalities of the law, because ultimately it could very well be that, things are not exactly what they look like. So the investigation, that is exactly what the investigation is, supposed to unravel. But there are quite a significant number of things that are not in her advantage. Number one, her husband, who is an advisor to an Italian member of European Parliament, a colleague of ours, has actually been fingered in this corruption scandal. As a matter of fact, it has been alleged that some, substantial sum of the 1.5 million euros involved in this corruption scandal has been recovered through him. He's been in custody of sort. Her father, Mr. Kaili himself, has also been fingered in this corruption crisis. So you see, the caucus, the member of the European Parliament caucus that she belongs to, which is the Socialists and the Democrats, have actually taken steps already to suspend her pending the investigation. So all of these are not in any way playing in her advantage. But of course, she remains innocent until proven guilty. But she has a very, very tight rope to walk here.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at how the process, how the European Union is handling this and comparing that with what happens here in Africa. You don't see that much follow through on the continent with corruption cases. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I hope that African parliamentarians and, the highest level of the African leadership will actually watch what is happening and see how much both the topmost leadership, but also the political groupings to which this specific member of European Parliament have, reacted in a very well coordinated manner, distancing themselves and taking all the necessary actions. I mean, I will give you one specific example. In NIDO Europe, Nigerians in Diaspora Organization Europe, right now, there was an election that took place recently where it has been alleged that there were fraudulent activities that re-elected the current chairman. Now, rather than saying, no, I can't be part of a system that brought me in, that re-elected me as a corrupt leader, I'm going to have a full-fledged investigation. People are saying, oh, let's move on, the election is over. If there's going to be any investigation, let it be one that actually looks at what happened, make recommendations, and then things carry on as if nothing happened. You see, even the diaspora, the African diaspora here in Europe, who are meant to actually help in sanitizing the situation in Africa, borrowing from the practices in the host countries, as we have seen in this Kaili matter, are actually, perpetrators of those hide-and-seek things. So Africa has a lot to learn from this. But if there is anything else to learn, it is also the fact that corruption is not only a disease that is, prevalent in Africa. It happens everywhere. But how the leadership actually reacts to them makes difference in terms of reform and in terms of cleaning up the system.
Couldn't agree more. Collins Weke, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your analysis with us on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Amarechi.
Well, coming up after the break. Supporters of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa celebrate the ANC stopping the impeachment vote against him. Stay with us. Welcome back. Delegations from 49 countries and the African Union are attending a 3-day U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C. It all began on Tuesday as the first of its kind since 2014, actually under former U.S. President Barack Obama. President Joe Biden is expected to use the opportunity to announce support for the African Union's admission to the G20 as a permanent member and touted support for food security and climate change.
Region that has in recent
45 African leaders are here attending the U.S.-Africa Summit in the hope that their countries will be better off at the end of this 3-day summit. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says the United States would announce investment for exchange programs for the African students and to support African entrepreneurs and small businesses.
Over the next few days, we will be announcing additional investments to make it easier for students to participate in exchange programs between our countries to increase trade opportunities for members of the African diaspora, and to support African entrepreneurs and small businesses. Each of these investments is guided by one overarching goal: to continue building our partnership so that we can better address the shared challenges we face, and ultimately, we can build a safer, more secure, more prosperous future for all of us.
It's not all about economic sway.
Thank you.
It's part of a renewed push to boost ties with a continent where U.S. interests have been challenged by China's security ambitions and trade and investment and lending drives.
Regarding Russia and China, the PRC, we're witnessing the PRC expand its footprint on the continent on a daily basis. And as they do that, they're also expanding their economic influence. A troubling piece there is that they're not always transparent in terms of what they're doing, and that creates problems that will be eventually destabilizing if they're not already. In turning to Russia, we see Russia continuing to peddle cheap weapons. Some of that was mentioned before by one of our senior leaders here. And also, we see Russia employing mercenaries across the continent.
By contrast, Beijing has held its own high-level meetings with Africa every 3 years for more than 2 decades. While Sino-U.S. competition is a clear backdrop, U.S. officials have been reluctant to frame the gathering as a battle for influence. Washington has toned down its criticism of Beijing's lending practices and infrastructure projects amid calls for some African leaders for more U.S. leadership.
Investing in peace is true, but investing in human capital
is the best option. And this is a very serious challenge to Africa, particularly where the fiscal capability or the revenue capability is very limited. Providing service delivery to the people, increasing the quality of education and health and issues like that is very important. Investing the civil society groups. These are the issues where changing the mindset of the society is the fundamental issue. That is the bottom, that if you push, so many things will change.
Earlier in the week, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the United States will commit $55 billion to Africa over the next 3 years. And during the summit this week, it will discuss 2023 elections and democracy on the continent with a small group of leaders.
Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has said African countries must wean themselves of begging the West to earn global respect and change poor perceptions about the continent. He made the remarks during the opening of the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C. Mr. Akufo-Addo urged greater solidarity among Africans to address shared aspirations. According to him, Africans are more resilient outside the continent than inside and must understand that to the outside world, there's nothing like Nigeria, Ghana, or Kenya. We're all simply Africans. Our destiny as people depends on each other. The president said the continent has skills and manpower, but needs concerted political will to make Africa work. Mr. Akufo-Addo's remarks came on the day the International Monetary Fund agreed to give Ghana a $3 billion loan to alleviate an unprecedented economic downturn in the West African country. Dozens of African leaders are in Washington to discuss cooperation with the U.S. amid growing Chinese and Russian influence on the continent. South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, is leading the South African delegation to the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, which began on Tuesday. According to a government statement, Pandor is representing President Cyril Ramaphosa, who, owing to a very busy schedule, could not travel to the summit. The summit will discuss 3 thematic topics, partnering on Agenda 2063, multilateral partnerships with Africa to meet global challenges, and promoting food security and food systems resilience. Mrs. Pandor will deliver remarks on the first topic, partnering on Agenda 2063. The last U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit was convened in 2014 under former President Barack Obama. And the renewal of the summit follows President Biden's intervention during the 34th summit of the AU in February 2021, wherein he underscored the U.S. commitment and readiness to partner with the continent in taking the relations to new heights. The VOA's Ignatius Anor is in Washington, D.C. at the media room for the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit. You must have had a long day today, Ignatius, honestly, trying to catch up with all the interviews and, doing hits for us. Really appreciate it. So now that we're in the second day of the summit, we're getting a sense now of what kinds of discussions are going on in Washington, D.C. Let's begin with what has been promised African leaders so far. Apart from the $55 million pledge from President Biden, what other promises have been announced?
Marcia, thank you very much. And it's very kind of you to comment on what a busy day it has been indeed since yesterday. You know that we've been standing here making sure that Africans are informed on what's happening at the second U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit happening in Washington, D.C. And you're right. There are several other deals that, as I speak to you, have been signed, are being signed, will continue to be signed with individual member states. Just a while ago, Togo, the Republic of Togo and that of Benin in West Africa signed the very first ever Millennium Challenge Cooperation account with their counterpart here in the United States. A good one for them because it would lead to the reduction of poverty and ensuring sustainable development in those 2 African states. I can also talk about an investment of $150 million into the mining industry in Zambia. That was also signed early on this morning at the ceremony that saw in attendance President, His Excellency Hiroshima of Zambia and his foreign minister, including Samantha Power, who is the administrator of the United States Agency for International Development. So we can't be at various places at the same time, but I can tell you that dozens and dozens of deals are being signed, from energy or the just energy transition to how to help combat climate crisis. There was a deal also signed between the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is Central Africa's largest nation, Zambia, and also the U.S. government as well, in developing the electronic vehicle value chain that would essentially inure to the benefit not only of those countries as the world shifts its attention to what they see to be the future of transportation, electric vehicle, particularly around the world. So several deals are being signed as I speak to you, running into millions and millions of US dollars.
Yeah, and I suppose Africans would also be interested in the nuclear fusion breakthrough that was announced yesterday in the United States as well. But I also guess that the message or charge by the Ghanaian president is something that may have been discussed in smaller circles amongst leaders in the summits. And we often don't ask what African leaders are bringing, to summits like these. What have you heard as regards African solutions to global challenges?
So, Amarachi, you should know that one of the concerns, or rather the goal, I should say, of the U.S. government is what was launched in South Africa when Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, visited in August. And he launched what is the U.S.-Africa strategy. And one of the key things about that project is what they call partnerships. So hitherto, there have been concerns by analysts that it hasn't been a win-win situation. That's not the case at this time. And you should know that all the thematic areas that are being discussed are conversations that were, are detailed in the African Union's 2063 agenda. Mm-hmm. And so the continent of Africa is really having a huge say as far as what's going on is concerned. And repeatedly, U.S. officials have said that this is a partnership. This is an equal partnership, and not to dictate to one person what they should do. And yesterday we heard from Jake Sullivan, who is the White House National Security Advisor, who says that the $55 billion that would be released for the next 3 years has no conditionality at all attached to it. So what the continent of Africa is bringing is a voice, is what they have to give, is what they think would be necessary to develop the continent vis-a-vis individual needs and concerns of the continent. So it's an equal partnership, I should say. And the continent of Africa, it's a huge voice as far as this relationship is concerned. Reasons we have not only the chair of the African Union, Senegalese President Macky Sall here, but also the chairperson of the AU Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat.
Yes, and I just wanted to ask Ignatius, one of the things the U.S. government hopes to achieve is, bringing in the African Union into the G20. They talk about, the support. Has there been any progress on that discussion at this summit?
That's a great question, Amarachi. And as I speak to you, in the next couple of hours, we will be hearing a speech from the host of this summit, President Joe Biden. He will be speaking in the next 2 hours, and then we will know exactly the kind of things that he will say. But yes, yesterday there were reports, that came from the White House indicating the U.S.'s support and a backing for the African Union to join the G20 of wealthy nations. I am definitely sure that this is something that we'll be hearing from him. Also expected to talk about the creation of a special representative council that would ensure that the ideas that will come up from this 3-day summit will not just die on the shelf, but will be implemented to impact not only the lives of folks on the African continent, but further deepen the relationship, the long-standing relationship that the United States is looking to build with its counterpart on the continent.
The war in Ukraine will probably also be one of the reasons, why this event has taken on added significance. What can America realistically expect from Africa, and what can Africa get in return regarding this?
Jake Sullivan, the White House National Security Advisor, as well as other, senior officials that we've spoken to. Yesterday, I spoke to Nathan Tech, who is the deputy spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, has said this platform, this summit, this relationship, I beg your pardon, to the next level is not to court Africa to be on the US's side against what they hope would be support against Russia as it continues its aggressive attack on Ukraine, but essentially to deepen, a relationship going forward that will inure to the benefit of both parties on different sides of the continent. And so as we speak now, and if you've been able to familiarize yourself with the lineup of this 3-day event, there is no conversation around, what's happening in Ukraine as we speak. It's basically a conversation between two parties who want to take their relationship to the next level with the political commitment and economic backing to that goal.
Yeah, and you're very right, Ignatius. No talk there about external issues outside of Africa. Finally, leaders will be having dinner tonight. Just wondering if you had any idea what they could be having tonight at the dinner table.
Well, that's a good question. You're right. This evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time in Washington, D.C., the delegation, the presidents of the African continent and the representatives of Zimbabwe, South Sudan, and South Africa will be having a dinner with President Joe Biden and his wife, Joe Biden, including Vice President Kamala Harris and the First Gentleman, Doug Emhoff. I can tell you that after a long day, you will agree that they need to unwind and need to take care of themselves. I'm not too sure what's going to be on that menu, but you can best believe that if it's the White House, it's something juicy, it's something good, and it's something refreshing. That you can best believe.
Yeah, and something that will help them sleep better at night. Ignatius, can't thank you enough for joining us on the program today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amachi, for the great work.
President Cyril Ramaphosa is not attending the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, but Parliament voted against starting an impeachment process against him on Tuesday. It was revealed by the Speaker. Lawmakers voted to reject a report by a panel of experts that found preliminary evidence that Ramaphosa may have committed misconduct over stash of foreign currency hidden at his private game farm. He's denied wrongdoing over the scandal, which has been dubbed Farmgate by the media. It challenged the report in court and has not been charged with any crime, but some opponents have called for his resignation. Before the vote, anti-Ramaphosa demonstrators briefly clashed with police outside of Parliament. Those same supporters have been celebrating in the meantime since the result was announced, singing in Soto language, Ramaphosa, we all love you, we're walking side by side with you. It was the outcome of the votes that put Ramaphosa in a stronger position to secure re-election as ANC leader at a party contest starting Friday and to run for a second term as head of state at a 2024 election. About 214 of the 400 lawmakers in the National Assembly, where the ANC has a majority, voted against setting up an impeachment committee to further probe the allegations against the president to make a recommendation on whether he should be removed from office. However, 5 ANC members were among the 148 lawmakers who voted in favor, disobeying instructions from the ANC's national executive. 2 lawmakers abstained from voting and many others were absent. Farmgate broke in June when South Africa's former spy chief Arthur Fraser told police thieves had raided Ramaphosa's Palapala game farm in February 2020 and had stolen at least $4 million in foreign cash found hidden in the furniture. Ramaphosa said a much smaller amount of money than that reported had been taken, and it was the proceeds of game sales. Contrary to allegations, he also said he did report the theft when he heard about it.
Yes, those who have voted yes, 148, and those who have voted no, 214. Abstained, hold on, honorable members. Abstention 2. And therefore, the Section 891 inquiry will therefore not be proceeded with. I thank you, honorable members. That concludes the business of the day, and the House is
Weather events wreaking havoc in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 120 people have died in the worst floods in the country's capital in years. Many of the dead were in hillside areas which suffered landslides and torrential rain. An eyewitness reported seeing the bodies of 9 members of the same family whose home had collapsed. A 3-day mourning period, a national one, began today. There's been a big increase in the number of people moving to Kinshasa in recent years as it suffers from inadequate drainage and poor urban planning. Still ahead on The World Today. Now, Rodgers and Chic headline music therapy charity's Christmas Carol service in London. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Founder of the failed cryptocurrency exchange FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, has been denied bail by a judge in the Bahamas. Bahamas Chief Magistrate Joanne Ferguson Pratt denied the petition for his release on bail, citing a great risk of flight, and ordered that he be kept on remand at a correctional facility until February 8th. U.S. authorities charged Bankman-Fried with one of the biggest financial frauds in U.S. history on Tuesday. According to Securities and Exchange Commission Chair Gary Gensler, the ex-FTX boss built a house of cards and a foundation of deception. Bankman-Fried has indicated he will fight extradition to the U.S. He was arrested on Monday in the Bahamas. And Elon Musk is no longer the world's richest man after a sharp drop in the value of his shares in electric car company Tesla this year. According to both Forbes and Bloomberg, Musk has been overtaken at the top spot by Bernard Arnault, the chief executive of luxury goods group LVMH. Musk is chief executive and the largest shareholder in Tesla, with a reported stake of about 14%. He completed a $44 billion takeover of social network Twitter in October. According to Forbes, Musk is now worth about $178 billion, while Bernard Arnault has a value of $188 billion. 4 people have died after a migrant boat ran into difficulties crossing the English Channel in the early hours of today. A person close to the situation says 43 people were saved, more than 30 rescued from the water. A major search and operation was launched in waters between Kent and France in freezing conditions. A boat is likely to be carrying migrants risking the crossing from France a day after Mr. Sunak announced new measures to stop the boats. The UK Coast Guard, the French Navy, the RNLI, and an air ambulance were all sent to help with the rescue operation. A fishing boat in the area and Coast Guard helicopters from Lyd and Lee on Solent were also involved. Well, speaking of the British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak expressed his sorrow at the tragic loss of human life. A number of other politicians have also expressed their condolences, including Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who said that her heartfelt thoughts were with those involved. Labour leader Keir Starmer said it was heartbreaking that there have been more deaths in the Channel, and Dover MP Natalie El-Fiki said she was very saddened to hear the tragedy. The operation follows a fatal incident in November 2021 when at least 27 migrants died after dinghies sank while heading to the UK from France.
Sorrow at the capsizing of a small boat in the Channel in the early hours of this morning and the tragic loss of human life. Our hearts go out to all those affected and our tributes to those involved in the extensive rescue operation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister? Our prayers go out to those who capsized in the freezing waters of the Channel last night. It's a reminder that the criminal gangs running those routes put the lives of the desperate at risk and profit from their misery. They must be broken up and brought to justice.
Sound bites there from the British Parliament regarding the incident this morning after a migrant boat capsized, killing 4 people, and then 43 others were rescued, many of them in freezing conditions, the waters being chilly this time of the year. The Prince and Princess of Wales have released their official Christmas card image showing them hand in hand with their children in the countryside. Prince William and Catherine are pictured walking with Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Princess Louis on a sunny day in Norfolk this year. Children, there they are in short-sleeved tops and shirts, while their parents are casually dressed in jeans and trainers. They were snapped by Matt Portis, who has documented the family in the past. Other publicly released family pictures have been taken by the Duchess of Cambridge herself, who's a keen photographer. It's become an annual tradition for the royals to reveal which of their favourite photographs they've chosen for the cards that they send out each Christmas. The King and Queen courts will release theirs on Sunday. But as we end the programme today, Nile Rodgers and Chic put on an energetic show as they headlined music therapy charity Nordoff Robbins' annual Christmas Carol service in London on Tuesday evening. Chic performed in New York in the early 1970s and behind hits such as No Freak and Good Times and I Want Your Love. Stepped in after original star attraction who were forced to pull out due to unforeseen circumstances. Rodgers, who turned 70 in September, has become a long-term supporter of the charity. His second time performing at the Christmas service, an experience he was more than happy to repeat.
It made me feel like Christmas was happening and it was fun to be a part of it. And that's what we're looking forward to this year. We want to really bring in the chic Christmas vibe.
I think that it would make so many people happy to do it that it would probably be impossible for me to my duty to the universe and God and my fans and our fans that, of course, something's going to happen for sure. I just don't know when, how it's going to go down. I don't think anybody's really worried about it.
Well, not your regular Christmas Carol service for sure. But thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.